I've made so many mistakes on Poshmark that honestly it was hard to pick 5, but I've boiled it down to my 5 biggest mistakes on Poshmark so that you can avoid them. Hey y'all, welcome back to my YouTube channel. My name is MOGIBETH, and for those of y'all who are new here, I own and run a 6-figure reselling business selling primarily women's clothing on places like Poshmark and eBay. And in today's video, we are discussing my 5 biggest mistakes that I've made on Poshmark. Last week was my 5-year anniversary of downloading the Poshmark app, and since then, I have sold over 7,200 items and earned over $280,000, and that is after Poshmark fees. So that is what Poshmark has deposited into my bank account thus far in my career on the app. And I've now gotten to a place where I have an office, I have a full-time employee, and I have a full-time virtual assistant all helping me out with my reselling business. But it really didn't start out that way. I started out just like most people, selling items from their personal wardrobe that they weren't wearing for a while. And then it just grew into an obsession that just snowballed and snowballed until it became my career and my business, which is something that I really didn't expect to happen. But I love selling on Poshmark. But if you're new to the Poshmark app, make sure to use my code MOGIBETH and you'll get $10 off your first purchase, because Poshmark is not only a great place to sell, but it's also a great place to buy things as well. So along the way within my Poshmark journey, I've made a bunch of mistakes. And while I think it's really important to make those mistakes because it's the way to learn and grow as a reseller, if you can learn from someone else's mistakes, that's even better and more efficient than having to make the mistakes on your own. So hopefully this video and me sharing my mistakes and learning lessons will help some of y'all out there. So I'm gonna go into depth a little bit about each one. So grab your tea, grab your coffee, maybe some popcorn, and let's jump into it. Okay, so mistake number 1 is caring too much about followers, host picks, community sharing, and all other social aspects of Poshmark. For way too long, I cared way too much about gaining a lot of followers, community sharing all day long, and getting as many host picks as possible. I used to even be one of those people who would go around and congratulate every single person who got a host pick on their listing. I even have photographic evidence to prove it. I spent so many evenings doing that because Poshmark really grew in popularity by selling the idea that if you were social on the app, you could really build a business and make more sales. And this concept was actually really popular amongst the demographic of millennial women over the past decade. Poshmark isn't the only one to take advantage of this girl boss strategy. And in fact, one of the most common examples is MLMs that grow a lot in popularity over the past decade that have used this idea that if you host parties and network amongst your friends, you can make a lot of money. And nowadays, millennial women are starting to see through that, and Gen Z is not buying into it at all. And that's because, at least in Poshmark's example, sharing, following, being a part of parties, being social on the app has virtually no impact on your sales. I go into more detail about why that is in a video I'll link up on the screen, my 5 tips video that I did over a year ago. But essentially, Poshmark is not used by buyers as a social app, it's used by buyers as a shopping app. And because of that, most buyers aren't scrolling through the feed to see something they want to purchase. Instead, they're searching specifically for things that they need or that they want. And while currently the default sort function in search is just shared, which means that sharing your own items is really important, sharing other people's items doesn't affect where they rank in search. And that makes community sharing completely pointless. Similarly, having a lot of followers or having a host pick in parties doesn't really make that much of a difference because that's not how buyers are interacting with the app. It's worth noting that currently Poshmark is actually testing out switching their default sort function from just shared to relevance, which would make sharing completely useless. not only sharing community shares, but sharing your own closet. However, right now the relevance algorithm is horrible. It's really, really bad. So if anyone from Poshmark is watching, please update your relevance algorithm before rolling that out, please. But if they did that, on the bright side, it would eliminate sharing, which would drastically reduce the amount of time needed to spend on the app clicking buttons. And as you know, I have a solution for that in my business, Posher VA, which I'll link down below in case you want to check it out. But overall, this mistake, number one, it's a huge one that I made, since so much of my time, precious time on this earth, wasted buying into the misleading message that by being social on the app, you can make more money on Poshmark, which just isn't true. It's not true today, and it never has been true on the Poshmark app. So instead, there are things that you can do to increase sales on Poshmark, some of which I've covered on here before, but it leads me into mistake number 2, which is not caring enough about search engine optimization. When I first started selling on this app, potentially a year into selling on this app, like I mentioned, I really wasn't thinking about how the consumer actually interacts with the app. But after being on this app for 5 years, I realized that there's really 2 main ways buyers find my listings. And the first is through Poshmark search, and the second is through Google search. Because unlike some selling platforms, Poshmark actually has developed their listings and optimized their listings to show up in Google search, which is a really great benefit of selling on Poshmark. Therefore, it's massively important to me as a reseller to optimize every single part of my listing so that they show up higher in search, and this is also known as search engine optimization. This is something that I focus on a lot in my Poshmark reseller course, because every single element of your Poshmark listing can make an impact in if you rank high in search or low in search. The photos you take, how you take the photos, how you write your title, how you write your description, the options you select in the drop downs, the way you price, all of it can affect how you show up in search, both on Poshmark and on Google. If you write your listings with these SEO priorities in mind, it will actually make a marked difference in your sales and in your visibility of your listings. However, if you have items that are just undesirable and things that no one is really seeking out, you could have the most optimized listings ever and you still be struggling to make sales. Which leads me to mistake number 3, and that is the various sourcing fallacies that I've made throughout my reselling career. The quality of your sourcing decision making has a massive impact on your reselling business, so I'm grouping a lot of mistakes into just mistake number 3 that a lot of resellers fall into, and that I have fallen into time and time again, and have really had to learn and create specific guidelines for myself around so that I don't fall into them. And so I'm not only going to talk about my mistakes, but also how I mitigate these mistakes. So the first and most pervasive mistake that I see resellers making, and that I have made in my reselling career, is refusing to check comps. And I totally get this mistake, because it's a much more enjoyable experience to just buy things based off of gut instinct, based off of what you think will sell, and not have to pull out your phone for every single item and spend 2 to 3 minutes per item checking to make sure that your gut instincts were correct. However, I spent probably 1, maybe 2 years kind of making purchasing decisions based off of just experience and gut instinct. And what ended up happening time and time again is that I would get home, start listing those items, and realize that a decent percentage of what I purchased was either totally saturated, meaning there were tons of listings of that exact item on Poshmark already, and therefore it was really hard to compete with those listings, or the average sales price was really low, or the sell-through rate was just really slow, meaning it was just not an item that was moving very much. And so checking comps while you're in the store before you've spent the money on the item is the best way to prevent this from happening. Because before you spend your hard-earned money, even if it's just $3 $3, $5, it's really important to just check the data, check comps, and make sure that it's a good purchasing decision. I have a video that I did fairly recently on checking comps, which I'll link up on the screen in case you want to dive more into that topic, because it really walks through my whole process. But I feel strongly that checking comps is a really, really important thing to do in order to avoid sourcing mistakes. But when I'm in a thrift store, in order for me to even consider checking comps on an item, I have to make sure that it meets these 4 conditions. The first is that the cost of goods is low enough in order for me to think that I could have a substantial profit margin and profit. And I also have a video on profit versus profit margin, which I'll link up on the screen. The second is that the item is actually a brand that people are seeking out on Poshmark. The third is that the item is in an in-demand style and isn't outdated. And then the fourth is that the item is in excellent condition with minimal or no flaws. Many sourcing fallacies revolve around neglecting one of those conditions. And these are all fallacies that I've definitely fallen prey to. Buying something because it's cheap and just because you have a low cost of goods without considering brand, style, condition at all. It's something I think we've all done. Another one is buying something because it's a brand that's been on your Bolo brand list, and yay, you found this brand, you can mark it off. So you just go completely brand blind, don't check the style, don't check comps, don't check the condition. Definitely fallen into that one several times. And then buying something just because you think it's cute, something that's on trend and in style, and something that you consider to be desirable, but because it's not a brand that people are seeking out, there's just very low likelihood or instances in which a buyer will just stumble across that item. So basically every sourcing fallacy or mistake that you can make, I have made at least multiple times, but really going through that checklist, making sure that it's priced low enough to allow for a decent profit margin, making sure it's an in-demand brand, an in-demand style, and is in excellent condition, checking for all the different flaws. And then after all those conditions are met, checking comps to make sure your intuition is correct and that this is an item that is in demand on the reseller marketplace is really going to ensure that you are having really high quality sourcing decision making. Okay, mistake number 4 that I have fallen into and that I see so many resellers fall into on Poshmark is forgetting that you're here to make money. And there are a lot of valid reasons to be on Poshmark. Not all of them pertain to money, but I think the majority of us are really on the app, spending a lot of time on the app trying to make money. And if that's you, it's really important to maintain focus on making money. Don't focus on having a perfectly curated closet or having excessive packaging or having a really cute posh room or having 1,000,001 gadgets and tools to help within your reselling career, or like I mentioned earlier, being social on the app. We're here to make money, and every decision you make, every purchase you make should really be focused on, will this help my bottom line? One way that I often see people, including myself, losing focus on making money is by trying to get the most amount for every single item in your closet. So you'll get offers that are $3 or $5 less than what you really want for the item, so you'll counter. And let me tell you, this is something that I fall prey to a lot, because there's a fine line between knowing what an item is worth and really sticking it out and waiting for the right buyer, and just focusing on increasing revenue overall and increasing cash flow, and therefore accepting offers as they come in, even if it's just a little bit below what you would expect. And how I make this determination in my reselling business is by really staying focused on making money and staying focused on a goal I have for the month, which is further broken down into a goal of sales that I have for the day. If you have purchased my spreadsheet on MOGIBETH.com, you're already familiar with this portion that I have on the bottom of my stats page, but in case you're not, I'll just post up a little picture here, because at the bottom it lists this month's sales goal, my sales needed per day, my sales needed to be on track, and what I'm on track to make this month. And so every day that I'm receiving and negotiating offers, I'm keeping a focus on how much in sales I need to make that day in order to be on track to hit my monthly goal. And I realized by doing this, I'm much more likely to just bite the bullet and accept offers, even if they're not exactly what I want or they're not perfect, in order to increase overall revenue for my business. And it's really helped with overall profitability. However, I just want to mention here, there are two other factors that I take into consideration when I'm thinking about accepting an offer. The first is how long the item's been listed, and then the second is how much interest is in the item. There are certain categories in which I expect a longer time period between listing and selling the item, such as designer pieces or formal wear, and those items are typically being sold to a less price sensitive customer base. And so I'm willing to wait for the right buyer oftentimes with those. But overall, depending on the category, depending on the brand, if an item has been sitting for a decent amount of time, I'm definitely going to be more lenient in terms of what offers I'll accept. But if an item has a high amount of interest, it's getting a lot of likes, it's getting a lot of comments, then I'll definitely be more willing to wait for the right buyer, because there's just a higher relative likelihood that another buyer will come along. Not only just on Poshmark, but I cross-list on other apps as well. So that's something I definitely take into consideration. But there are a lot of factors that I consider when deciding whether to counter, what to counter with. And so if you're interested in me making a video on negotiations as it pertains to reselling, let me know in the comments down below, because I can get into a lot more detail about that topic. But really, I want to sum up this mistake by saying, don't tie up your personal pride in the way your closet looks or what prices you're getting for your items. Really just focus on the overall goal of making money. And as long as you're doing that, you should feel good about your business. Even if that means your inventory isn't the cutest, or if it means you're not getting the very tip-top amount for every single item in your closet, keep revenue flowing in, keep making sales, keep inventory moving, and keep making money. Okay, so with all of that being said, it leads me to mistake number 5, which is not expecting to make mistakes on Poshmark and subsequently freaking out when you do. In the reselling business, or really in any business, if things can go wrong, they will go wrong eventually. If you stick around as a reseller long enough, you will mix up shipping labels, receive 1-star reviews, lose inventory, ship out the wrong item, have cases open for legitimate and non-legitimate reasons, and have those cases that you fight be accepted for legitimate and non-legitimate reasons. Find flaws on items that you're just getting ready to ship out, ruining things in the wash, and the list goes on and on and on. And I have made every single one of those mistakes at least a couple of times. And the thing is, I run a pretty tight ship. I've managed to retain a 5-star average rating on Poshmark after all of this time, but still things go wrong. And so the biggest thing is just don't beat yourself up when you make a mistake, when things go awry. And also, if I could go back and tell myself, I would just say, don't worry in anticipation of things going wrong, because I used to have so much anxiety when I was selling on Poshmark, especially in the beginning. Whenever I would make a sale, I would just get super anxious about, did I miss a flaw? Did I get the right shipping label? I would check things over and over and over again, and even open up packages just to make sure I had the right things in there. But having as much anxiety as I did led me to actually kind of dread making sales on Poshmark, which is the exact opposite mentality of what you want to have. And so if you're someone who deals with this, whose whole day is ruined whenever you make a mistake, or whenever you have a return, or whenever things go wrong, my solution to this is to create a list of all the things that could go wrong. And then once those things inevitably happen, because they will, buy yourself a cup of coffee, check it off the list, and just try to learn something from that mistake, but really just lean into, okay, you've made the mistake, you survived, and you're becoming a better reseller for it. And just trying your best not to let it ruin your day and ruin your morale and make an impact on your perspective and your mental health. Things will go wrong. You will make mistakes. But mistakes, like I said at the beginning of this video, are really learning opportunities that will make you a better reseller. All right, well, that was my 5 biggest mistakes that I've made on Poshmark. I went on Instagram and asked y'all what your biggest mistakes were, and so I wanted to share a few of those in my newsletter coming up. But I also want to hear from you in the comments section. So let me know, what are the biggest mistakes that you've made on Poshmark, especially ones that I missed, because like I said, there are tons of mistakes that I've made. But I'd love to hear from y'all and what mistakes you've made in your reselling career on Poshmark. But that's it for the video. Make sure you like it and subscribe if you haven't already. Thank y'all so much for watching. I'll see y'all in the next one. Okay, love y'all. Bye.